Welcome back to Turn Down For What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in.
Welcome.
Wait.
Are you going to do it?
Welcome back to Turn Down For What? Another day.
Another special episode.
There we go.
I think because Chris kicked it off,
It's
he
true.
should have done the
It's
intro.
true.
But
It's true.
you know,
I didn't want to alleviate his ability to answer the call. Another day.
This is great, man. So yeah, we're doing a special part live, and then we'll repost it back on our YouTube channel later for better visibility. But yeah, part live episode. We got Josh and Jesse on the road. We got Jace calling in from Ohio. Myself still out in California, starting the day, and lots of exciting news out of Kentucky. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk a little bit about Ford and what we heard. We're gonna see if Josh and Jesse in the middle of nowhere can stream, because I think they just locked up. Oh, they're unlocked. We need to get.
We're back.
Where are you guys driving at?
We left East Tennessee, and we are going to speak at and be a part of the Georgia Clean Energy Roadshow that's taking place over 3 days. It starts in Savannah, Georgia tomorrow, so that's where we're headed now, is Savannah, Georgia, and then we're going to Macon, and then it ends in Atlanta, North Atlanta and Lawrenceville. And we're speaking to.
We're gonna have to see how good your audio is, man. You started chopping up again, but we need to get if anybody knows Starlink, and Starlink wants to sponsor us so we can get a mobile Starlink rig for Josh and Jesse. Definitely tag us in on the important Starlink people.
Yeah, we got called out. Every week we get called out on social media for not posting enough, but it's like every week Jesse and I are doing something like this, so we have to be mobile.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to do live when we can and post when we can, and people are it's good that they want more content, and then it's just sometimes it's inelegant when we get it to post also to the streaming service, versus the live. The live is a lot easier, but the live doesn't always get the way YouTube works, especially like it goes into a separate live bucket. It doesn't show up on the main channel feed or under videos. And it does it with all the podcast channels that go live. It kind of it's its own thing. So it definitely makes it more of a challenge. And then we have to upload it manually to Apple and what's the other Spotify and all of those, right?
Yeah.
So,
and Podcastle, and there's a ton of podcast locations that we get streamers from.
and it takes so much work, as you can tell. They're just wore out by the time they have to pick up the podcast and take it over and put it into the other one. I mean, it's so hard. I mean,
it's like an engineer, though. You know what I mean? I mean, hey, look, I haven't uploaded it. Josh does it all. So I thought we would lead off with some special news from Kentucky that we didn't talk about on the last Tech Charged episode and wanted to touch on, but lots of exciting things premiering in Kentucky, including speaking of Josh and Jesse, the new layout for Power Up America. So all the new innovation that's coming out of the Kentucky plant will be able to stop at a Power Up America. And I love seeing this graphic of what this is going to look like for you guys. You guys are targeting next year to open, right? Like, give us the details and give us the update on what you're hearing from NEVI, so that we can kind of understand. You're hopefully going to have a bunch more of these down in the South, and some big NEVI announcements today make that look a lot more optimistic. First of all, I love the pull-through charging. I love that there's a bus included in here. And of course, I love our buddies at ChemPower. So many cool things to see here. Like, tell us more, and then we'll transition into the other Kentucky news.
That's a hydrogen bus.
no.
No, it's not. Stop it.
I'm just kidding. On the NEVI front, we're actually breaking ground in less than a month now in Manchester, Kentucky, to build the first site, and it will actually, the targeted opening date's going to be in late November. So we will have it available for the holidays as the target.
Yeah, and some of the other things about this site, NACS, MCCS, we've talked about that before, so no adapter is needed. You know, we always say the best adapter is no adapter. So in this case, every charger will have its own bespoke system. You know, the cable length, again, when you're doing pull-through design, it's up to the person how far or how close they want to make it. So we're trying to, again, build something from EV drivers for EV drivers. If we have a trailer on one of our Fords, great, you can pull in with this. And it's not too far from the new battery plant that they're building up there. It's not too far from where the announcements today are going to be. And like you were saying, NEVI is back. NEVI is the program that is paying for this project. And we have multiple other sites that we've been awarded. We have multiple states that we are waiting awarding. And they came back today and basically said, let's go. We're getting right back to it. So all of these sites, they didn't add anything. They just took away guidance from a standpoint of red tape. So it's going to be able to be installed quicker. I can see these dropping in the next year. You'll probably have hundreds in the Southeast alone. Some of the details were, immediately. You now, as effective today, can start these RFPs again. Reduce paperwork on us. That's going to reduce cost for everybody. 50-mile rule is still in effect, but states can be more flexible with how they can request if that 50 miles are too. I'm going to slow down a little bit so I ain't so loud. It's just all the old ones can start back. It's just better than it was before. And that's the kind of thing that we're hoping for.
Yeah, I think, that's a huge deal, obviously, having NEVI. And I think it's been, that pause was really something that was disruptive to so many CPOs. So I'm excited to hear that those things are back on track. And hopefully what we're going to start seeing then is a bunch of NACS port new generation Ford vehicles, because that was the other big Kentucky news. Secondary, of course, to Power Up America being in Kentucky. The other huge Kentucky news is the new Ford Universal vehicles. So I am beyond excited to kind of hear the kind of broad kind of stroke plans for this and what this looks like. Jace, you've been the closest to this. You've been talking about this for a little bit, kind of correcting some misinformation online a little. Like, talk about what your thoughts were as you were watching it.
Yeah. What a fun, exciting day. Kind of, I think exactly went to planned as far as what we sort of expected. Like you said, there was sort of some, I don't want to say misinformation, but there were some, we heard a lot of claims, right? Like we were going to say, we were going to hear or see T3 for the first time, and the T3 is the mid-size truck, and that we're going to see a Maverick EV. We saw all sorts of things, right? So, it was fun to see all the speculation. But I think if you really followed Ford close and you have listened to the earnings calls and you've seen where we are with the plants being built, battery plants being built, you knew, at least in typical Ford way, sure to see the vehicles today. We just weren't quite there yet. Like the plants literally are not finished yet. The battery plant is not finished yet as well. So I think Ford doesn't really show a vehicle 2 years in advance and then release it. They really show it pretty quickly right before it's available for sale. So cool that we did kind of see some teasers. I thought that was really cool that we got to see the workers in the plant that got to see it. And I just think from an overall standpoint, one thing I knew was coming was manufacturing. I think everybody knew that, right? Manufacturing improvements were coming, probably castings. We've talked about this on the podcast, those sorts of things. But what I didn't put together too was the overall product of using the manufacturing folks and putting them in is the conversation as well, bringing them to the table, if you will, and building the product around how you build it physically as a company as well. Not just to save money, but to literally save your labor, right? And I think that was really fascinating. That was something I didn't necessarily see coming. So really, really exciting. Like we said, Ford Ford Universal EV platform, and we saw a few graphics today that maybe up to we've heard, I think, up to 8 vehicles, right, possible. Yep, there is. That's super fun. I think that gives you a really good clue as to kind of what's coming on this platform. I think without seeing the products, we saw the idea, and we're seeing the product that's going to build the product.
Yeah, I know for me, it's going to be, I'm not going to have a lot of interest in the mid-sized truck just because I'm not a mid-sized guy, but there's going to be a ton of people that are. I think as it kind of cycled through, the one that's going to be most interesting for me is going to be the more of an SUV style thing. I'm going to have to put it up against what R2 looks like, and with those price, and 30,000 is certainly looks like it's below what R2 will launch at, but now you got to compare all the other specs. My wife for sure is going to be interested more in that.
Well, and you mentioned specs, and I think that's an interesting kind of conversation. We weren't really sure what direction Ford was going to go, right? Were we looking at like the sort of Tesla model of stripping down your vehicles sort of to make them, more affordable? We saw that recently with like their long range and a few other, and their more affordable things. We're seeing them kind of strip some things out to make it into, the price point that they want it to be at. But Ford and Slate, similar, right? We've seen Slate was gonna, they're stripping everything out to get to that 30,000 price point. But Ford doesn't appear to be doing that. They're saying, it would have Pro Power. Blue Cruise was even mentioned. We talked about that on Tech Charts last week. Were we going to see to Blue Cruise? Was Blue Cruise? I thought we would, just because I think what's coming next for the more expensive EVs would be like level 2.5, level 3. So I thought, we would probably see Blue Cruise in these vehicles, and it sounds like we will. And that ROI will come back to Ford, right, with the subscription pricing. So very interesting. Yeah, I think they're not stripping these vehicles down. They're going to have a frunk. They're going to have all these things that EV should have. This is not an Equinox, right? Like, we have who knows if that's coming to the SUV, but I think it's a good tease that the mid-size pickup will have a frunk and a bed, and Pro Power and all these things.
Josh, I think you had some thoughts. Yeah.
The initial conversation when they introduced this topic of the $30,000 truck was, that it was, quote, the size of a RAV4 on the inside with a pickup truck back end. So it's definitely
more spacious, I believe, is the quote. Yeah, even more spacious than the RAV4.
More spacious than the RAV4. But that's where, you've seen that they're going to introduce this electric mid-size. That's how they're targeting the efficiency. But, they were talking about the streamlining. They were talking about the fact that a lot of these products are going to be made in the United States, so the battery is going to be sourced here. And
imported, which is interesting. Or exported, excuse me. Yeah, like they'll build it here and they will export it, which I thought was huge news, that we're going to be building, next gen EVs here in America and exporting them, as opposed to kind of what they do now with, JVs and all sorts of things, over in Europe. We don't really build, stuff here for Europe. So that's exciting.
But similar to what the GM did with their Ultium platform, they've built all of their EVs around the Ultium platform. This is Ford saying, hey, this is our platform. This is going to be what we establish our brand on. But it seems like the technology and the improvements in the system, they're going for lighter weight, smaller, but then the vehicle to be targeted to be more efficient, to then end up being able to get cheaper, because the battery is the most expensive part of these EVs. And so when you're doing the development, having a functional battery that's smaller will give you the ability to be cheaper. But if they, we got commented, somebody on X was saying, well, we were promised a $39,000 Lightning, and here we are. But if they can actually, what Jim was saying was fundamentally this is going to be profitable as far as an EV goes. And if they can actually stick to that and release a $30,000 EV that's going to make money for the company and be profitable, it's going to be a very big deal for their national outlay.
Well, and to go back to your point too about the people, you got to have your people on board. So now you're telling everybody, hey, I'm going to have less moving parts that need to be welded. I'm going to have less jobs for people to do.
Exactly.
So you're going to have to reassure them that we're making it easier on you. we're still going to have you there, but we're not cutting your
Yeah.
job out. Because there was that was the theme today. Is it seemed to me is selling everybody at Ford, hey, you're part of our team and you're going to help us do it. And why would you mention the RAV4? Well, it's because that took over as the number one car in the United States. It's no longer the F-150, it's the RAV4. So now you can have a RAV4 and a bed on it. And then lastly, who is Slate? You know, Slate is a car company that I thought was really cool, but they got a 150, 160 mile range on their base battery at that $30,000 price point. And now here's Ford coming out saying, hey, about the same time, you're going to have this car that's base model, or you can have ours. It's the same thing, except ours is probably going to be a lot better built.
And they were very distinct in the fact that they mentioned multiple times that it would not alter the technology features, like you'd mentioned, Jason. It's something that they seem like they're taking pride in actually producing a new era of technology and putting those into these vehicles, which is interesting because, I mean, the upgrade opportunity there is large compared to what some of the other vehicles see, but they're saying that it's going to be loaded with tech at 30,000, which would be a game changer.
If they could pull it off, then it is a moment that I could point at and say that is probably a new Model T if they can pull it off. I didn't see enough today for me to get excited about it because I wanted to see it. I wanted to look at it because once you see the model ready to go, then you know it's coming. But I guess also if it's going to be a year or two, you also don't want to give your competitors the opportunity to see it because I doubt there's a lot of people that have been able to look at it. So the fact that they're even able to talk about producing that vehicle at that price and making a profit, to me, is a Model T moment because nobody in America today has been able to say they could do that at the quality I believe Ford could put into it.
GM can't. GM
scale.
can't do that.
Yeah,
Well, there was a lot of interesting things in there, like the fact that they flew out. So there's one of those employees that we actually met last year at Electrify Expo at the Ford, the pre-event on the Saturday that Ford had. One of those employees in the video was out here at the Greenfield Labs, and there was a screen, not a screenshot really, but a video clip, and they were really clever with the angles. I'm curious if somebody will sift through that video and find any reflections or any other kind of hidden Easter eggs anywhere.
I haven't done it yet, but I was going to go through here later and see if I can go through and see and look at the background. I think Ford was pretty cautious about what they showed, but yeah, just a quick few facts on the things that they said. So a quarter of the parts, a half the amount of fasteners, and they completely removed a certain amount of clip. Forgive me, I don't know the exact name of said clip, but all the people in the audience that build the vehicles clap, so you know it must be a pain in the butt for them. Yep. And then 2/3 of the welds and 4,000 feet of wires removed. And then I believe there was another quote there too. I was trying to get it exactly. I believe they said they can use a battery of 1/3 the size or 1/3 less of the size. Is that correct? So not 1/3 of it. So basically 2/3 of the size of the current battery is what I got from that. Is that correct?
Yeah. And that's where I'm curious about some
with
of
getting the same range as the current Gen EV.
Does that mean it's going to be 48 volt?
Yeah. So
with the wiring being removed, that sounds awfully like that. Yes.
There's a lot of things implied and a lot of conjecture, a lot of speculation. And then there were some things that were specific and some things that were, I think, left to the imagination. I think that I would love to hear specifically, is it 48 volts? It seems like that would make sense. It seems like we've talked before about they're going to have this almost like hybrid zonal architecture, but this sounded very zonal architecture.
I agree. And Doug said at one point, like zonal architecture. I mean, I was like,
they're still calling it that. Now I still think the main brain will be controlled by Ford in that zonal architecture, and perhaps all of the associated modules will be their third-party partnerships, because that seemed to be.
But to remove 4K feet of wiring too, and I'm sure that comes with less harnessing, and so there's got to be less modules. There's just no way that they could do that and remove that much.
Are we going to do 800 volts? Very curious to find out.
They have to do 800. They have to do 800.
More expensive though, right? They got to. So I'm super curious about those details. Obviously,
the other huge piece too. Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. The other huge piece we haven't mentioned yet was the unit castings. I think that was like the again, sort of like what you said though, Chris. some left up to imagination, yet some very detailed specs too. Like they it's brand new machinery, essentially, they said at one point, that will be building these unicastings, state of the art, things that have not been done anywhere in the world, was set at a few different points in car manufacturing. That tells me maybe even a step ahead of what we've seen from Tesla. That I didn't really necessarily expect that. I thought Tesla level, but they're claiming, kind of even a jump ahead of that, even maybe a jump ahead of China based on, kind of what the words they use. So very fascinating.
Yeah, I'm curious what that looks like.
It was,
go ahead, Josh.
I think it's an important conversation because as a nation, especially with the politics of EVs that have taken place, we have talked about it a bunch on the podcast, but China needs to be looked at. And they talked about it. Like, China has taken over this industry, and they were talking about how we're not going to compete with China by doing cheaper labor because that just doesn't exist, but they're going to beat China by doing better infrastructure and better some of these other points that they brought up. But looking at some of the points that they're addressing with the streamlined manufacturing lines, with the modular manufacturing setup that they had kind of referenced, and some of the other features such as the batteries with none of the rare earth metals, and some of those things allows us to source our own batteries here, which is something that I might be ignorant, but is there any other vehicle in the United States made with U.S. sourced batteries?
Tesla has
yes, but not prismatic LFP cells.
Correct. Yeah, there are NMC cells that, like, LG, Panasonic, Tesla, they're doing NMC. Yep. Tesla is working on LFP strictly for their energy storage units. Ford would be the first to do LFP for an automotive application made in the U.S. And that
GM's plan was to also bring it in-house, and they actually lobbied against Ford for the deal that Ford made with cattle, and then now have since gone completely 180'd and did basically essentially exactly what Ford did, except for they are going to still bring it in-house, but they're not doing it until much later.
So that'll be super fun to watch. Like, what does the CATL battery look like? That one seems to be what's going to happen first out of Michigan. And then you've got the SK On partnership, which is also LFP. That's going to be an interesting, what's that going to look like? Then you've got, they're focused on the Kentucky plant and kind of retooling that. And there is definitely a prototype, because they said in the video that they have shown that truck, and people got to see it, and they got to see the harnesses, and they got to see. So I'm curious how long before we see one of those mules leaked on a photo with camouflage.
They could, they could have shown it today, and they just didn't, because they wanted everybody to be in suspense. And they're all turds for that, but that's okay.
No, hey, look, here's my thing is I missed, and I think obviously we're all here on the podcast, and none of us are in Kentucky. So I missed my invite in the mail for this one. So I am happy.
It looked like there was only like 100 people there, period.
Right,
it was a small group on that.
Which is, I think that's why that all kind of makes sense, right? That there's going to be a product reveal, right? And
that's the one I want to be.
Who's to say exactly? I agree, but who's to say that product reveal won't be multiple products? Maybe that's why they're holding back as well. Maybe this truck is ready, but they also want to show the other. And again, Ford's MO is not really to show a vehicle 2 years before it goes on sale. That's just not really what they do. Interesting.
And they've talked about
when you have the platform like they have, and instead of just having the little truck with it, you also have that for a smaller SUV like they talked about. And what if you put it in the Mustang body that is the traditional Mustang body to compete against the Model 3? But now you can get something that goes 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, gets 300 plus miles of range, but it is in a body of probably one of the nicest looking Mustangs that they've designed in a long time.
I think that the foundation
probably won't do that.
The foundation for what they built with this infrastructure and with the battery platform, even the little graphic you showed showing all the different shapes of the vehicle, I think it would be a crazy thing not to launch with a $30,000 car, sedan, midsize SUV, whatever that's classified as, the small truck, But then you could also do, like I said, a car, which they may avoid because they've avoided that in their gas lineup as well. But
well, we know what the third vehicle is, though. They've given us a little clue. The third vehicle is a commercial vehicle, and it's probably a commercial EV van.
In fact, if you look at it, let's go through real quick here with that video. So there's the truck, right? And then it's going to morph into kind of like that SUV kind of model, right? And then it's going to go, there's a glimpse there of like there's a sedan
looking car.
Yeah, there's a 3-row.
This was the most interesting one to me was the 3-row, because we know that Ford had a 3-row SUV that was basically ready to go. It was the design, everything was ready to go. It was done, but they canceled it. Seeing that is interesting.
This is very E-Transit X, S, or Transit Connect, I should say. Sorry, this is very Transit Connect kind of looking. There's a big market commercial for that, municipalities, all that kind of stuff. So maybe the truck is in that tradition of trust the truck, and I know it's not P3, but the truck is what they do best. It's what they're known for. That's what they're going to kind of launch with. But I think the others will iterate and follow as they get the line figured out, as they get the bugs worked out.
And commercial, they've really pushed Ford Pro, and so if they can make you've seen what Rivian's done with Amazon. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I see every Amazon package that is delivered to our house is in a Rivian van now. Every single one.
On this road trip, we've seen about 40 Rivian delivery vans.
Yeah, so
it's insane.
Commercial is huge for them. I think that the thing is they need to pump out 100,000 of these things to make them make sense. I think there's a lot of exciting things that we're going to see how Ford makes them their own, but they're not transformational concepts. It's what's transformational is for Ford to be doing these things. Ford can't control the labor costs. They need to be partners with UAW. You need to have this stuff in America. There's American jobs, American energy, American manufacturing. Like all that stuff is amazing. They talk about structural battery packs. That's huge. Yep. You're talking about the kind of using those. So you can see you're going to have, and I'll bring it up here. As somebody that in my 9 to 5, I do Lean Six Sigma is part of what I'm accredited with FedEx. We call it QDM. I'm QDM expert of workflow. And so this video here showing the kind of tree assembly line, right, where you could see you could have a structural battery pack meeting these different kind of giga castings all coming together with less welds, less parts. We know a huge part of their losses come from warranty claims, warranty repair. And so if there's less components, less parts, less failure opportunities, that's less warranty claims. There's so much that's exciting about this.
A huge quote was that from, I believe was it Doug that said it, or Alan, one of the two said it, that on the manufacturing line, it's very common to put seats. Well, it's what's done. You put a seat through the door, and you put the instrument panel through the door.
Yes.
And basically Doug said, I believe, if this all pays off, you will never see an IP or a seat go through a door on an assembly line again. It's completely, and it's not, I shouldn't even say assembly line, because that's not even really what it will be either. They've kind of blown that idea up, which is funny because that was Ford's idea, right, back in the day. So now we've completely just found something new. It's fascinating. It's really, really cool.
He did the whole Tesla quote of the best part is no part. So that stuff is all stuff that's going the right in the tradition of Tesla in China with the castings, the structural battery packs.
And remember, these people are Tesla, former Tesla employees. Alan Clark and Doug Field. Yeah, exactly. They are. Yep. I tweeted it a little bit ago. Ford hasn't shown it in a little bit. It's been a while, but we saw why Ford has the dream team of EVs today, because they are truly like the experts at making this happen and making it a profitable and affordable for the consumer.
Yeah, and Mark points out, and this is something that
what I'll say is that they can actually deliver.
No, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'll say if they actually can deliver a $30,000 EV to the market, it's going to lead to the north of $100,000 in sales, because the Model Y has done so well. Partially, it's good tech, but it's because it's so affordable, and it's what the market has lacked so heavily in the United States is an EV under $50,000 even. But if they can deliver a good, reliable EV at $30,000, they will sell more than 100,000 of those a year.
And so something Mark was talking about, it was that the Maverick and the Bronco Sport and the Escape, Lincoln Corsair, those are all built on a similar platform. The Mach-E on kind of a modified platform. What a lot of those share in common is they're all built in Mexico. And here's a situation where we're insourcing all of those jobs. And so conceptually, a lot of this stuff individually is not unheard of. Like the shared platform, like Mark is saying, that's not unheard of.
But those are built in the old way too. You have to remember.
Correct.
So they're not. You can't necessarily compare them. I mean, we can, but this is totally, hopefully at least, going to be the next breakthrough, right? Yeah, we're building it in totally different fashion. And remember, kind of what I said earlier, bringing in the people who build the product with that as well, not just doing it the old like that. All those platforms are great with the and Bronco Sport and Escape and Lincoln Corsair, but they aren't really optimized to their optimal way that they could be with a platform that's now coming like they have.
And VW and GM, they all have shared. They have shared models with shared platforms. So the platform sharing isn't revolutionary, but to do it the way they're going to do it, to do it with the new manufacturing line, with the new workflow, to do it with the batteries being produced in America, that's going to be their big differentiator. Is that you can't? And Jim talked about this. Instead of outsourcing the labor to cheaper markets like Mexico, like Korea, like these other places, China, we're going to bring them all to America. He really hammered home on the U.S. jobs, which I think is so smart and so important. And so it's the combination of all this, the zonal architecture, the software, what's it called? Software defined vehicles, all these things all together as a full package, right? As a full ecosystem, which is a lot of what he saw in China too. And the way that they'll communicate with each other, all exciting. The 30,000 thing, I think I might feel differently about this than Jace, because, and maybe I heard you wrong, Jace, but I don't think the base 30,000 is going to include everything. And I think there's a couple reasons I don't think that. So
it's tough to say though, because Ford really is going towards the subscription model, like we saw with Mach-E. So it depends. I think they will go that way and saying it's on the truck. Now, is it in, the hardware is there, but you have to pay for it to get it, right? So there's two sort of different conversations there.
Yeah, I think for Blue Cruise, that's true. I think the interesting conversation is going to be things like, so the battery pack, for example, is the one that stood out to me, because on one hand, you mentioned it, they're going to have a 2/3 size battery pack. Right. I think that will be the first one on offer, maybe rear wheel drive. They talk about they can move the drivetrain. Since the frunk is going to be a usable space, I think you're talking rear wheel drive, base model with a smaller battery pack. But then they mentioned 6 days of home backup. Well, that implies 100+ kilowatt hour battery pack, because the average home is going at least, like if I am just dead in the water, not using any power, just my ambient, I'm pulling somewhere near 15 kilowatt hours a day out of my house. And if I'm using some stuff, it's closer to 20. If I'm using AC, it's totally different. But I'm figuring you're going to, on average, you're going to be somewhere, I think the average home is 35 kilowatt hours a day is like the average that's being used. But if you just reduce that to 20, and you say 6 times 20, that's 120 kilowatt hours. So that's not a 2/3 battery size, and that's not going to be a 30,000 spec, even in LFP.
Well, so I think it's different too. Like, are we talking truck? And like you said, are we talking what trim are we talking of said truck? And then once we move to midsize SUV, will it have Pro Power at all? Will it even have a frunk at all? I mean, yeah, it's all going to be very interesting to see. Like,
yeah, the details.
But I will say that I was happy overall to hear them mention Blue Cruise, to hear them say that we'll have a frunk. I was like. Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm glad they're trying to Pro Power even being mentioned at all too. I was glad to see that they're trying to keep the best aspects of the Ford, current gen EVs while making it affordable, if that makes sense. So I hope, like, obviously we're not going to see massaging seats or, right. There's going to be things that we're not going to see. Absolutely. But, again, and they're really pushing the software defined platform software that we have. I believe it said have not seen yet. Correct. So that implies a step beyond Ford digital experience, which is amazing. I don't, if you're out there and listening, if you haven't checked out the Lincoln Nautilus is a good example. Navigator, the Expedition,
the new Explorer.
Explorer. I mean, there's tons of vehicles that have this now, and it's excellent. It's much better than Sync 4 4A. So to hear them say that it's going to be another level, wow. Okay, cool. Can't wait.
So yeah, I think you prove this out in Kentucky. I think you get it going, you get the line moving, you get all the bugs worked out, you get the workflow dialed in. Then as that's kind of solidified, that goes into Blue Oval. That starts getting into your bigger T3s. That starts getting to your series hybrid, which will hopefully still share those same zonal architecture features, all those cost savings. And then that gets you into a political environment in 2028 that maybe looks a little different. There's a lot, there's a lot there that could be smartly laid out for Ford. And they're starting with the premise that these smaller, affordable ones are the ones that we need to get scaled. I still don't think it's going to meet like a Model Y type of volume. In fact, the factory can't. Like the factory is, again, it's a 6-figure number, but it's not Model Y. Model Y, for that matter, has 2 different factories in the U.S. to produce that. So I think the biggest comparison for me is going to be more R2 than it is Model Y. But I think has the potential.
But interesting that Ford chose to go after RAV4.
Well, RAV4 is the big dog, right? Like that's the
but I'm still kind of surprised that that's huge scale. So that tells you. I mean, I think RAV4 and Model Y, right, par for par, like boom boom.
I agree.
They're right. So
2 different customers, but yes,
definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. But as far as cars, right, sales, scale, all that's the very, very similar vehicles. I was surprised to hear Ford kind of call out RAV4 because I agree. I think that shows you where their ambitions are. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's good to have that type of ambition. It's good, I want them to scale. I want them to do 100,000+ of these things because the other factor, of course, that we haven't touched on is the dealer network. And the dealer network can be an advantage, but it can also really kill you with that MSRP because it works both ways. Like people have talked about, they promised a 40,000 XYZ. They did, as a reminder, sell some $40,000 Pros.
They did.
And for that matter, there are a number of people that I see getting $45,000 XLTs because the market has shifted and there's people getting good deals. You and I got great deals on our Platinum.
I was just about to say, I bought my Platinum for less than what I bought my standard range Lariat in, so I mean, it goes both ways, and that's people can complain about it, but we have saved thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars off of MSRP on our Ford vehicles over the year. Upwards of like $30,000. Almost maybe times 2 if you put both of our vehicles together. So I mean, it goes both ways, but yeah.
Well, and then the other thing here is if you can make a $30,000 truck at this size and make money, you'll be able to make a $59,000 larger truck that's double the size and make money. Because in this part, I feel like it would scale very easily at that point. And then think about this: if say Cybertruck came out and it was the 2-wheel drive with the smaller everything to begin with, that cheaper entry level, say $50,000 or $49,000 instead of what we got at 80 to 120 first, how many more of those trucks would we see on the road today instead of what we do see? So maybe having that offering and saying, hey, it's exciting for me because we're going to see what our next full-size truck is going to look like before it's released. And I can't wait to see what they can come up with.
The other important thing for me is, we lose the tax credit in a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the affordability of all the current EVs is going to suffer even further now. And so the fact that they could potentially release these EVs that you could buy without the incentive and they're competitive to gas helps promote the next phase of the evolution of EVs, because the $100,000 EV is never going to be 100,000 sold in a year. It's a niche market. Yes, there's
we see how Maverick sells. Bronco Sport, awesome.
Yep.
But that's where if they can make a 30,000 with no incentive, that's the next phase of the evolution of electric vehicles.
And good charging, which we now have again today, where we can start back offering good charging opportunities across the United States.
And they said they did mention charging. Do you remember? It was very quick, but they said something about like fast charging. It was like a weird quote though. It's like fast charging.
Just said that.
never seen before or something like that. And I was like, huh? I didn't really understand that. But something like that.
The quote that I got was Jim was talking about it'll have DC fast charging at the start or something like that. I was like, I don't know what that means. Like
there were a couple of weird
like alluding to
charging references.
Probably talking about our
maybe
our
that's
location
exactly
in
that.
Kentucky.
Yeah, that must be what I was. No, I think you might be right on you nailed it on the head. It's sort of like what Chris said earlier. We saw some details. There were some things left to the imagination. I think that's one of those things where it's like, you're right. It's probably 800 volts. They didn't want to say it's 800 volts yet, but.
Because that is a different thing. If you've got 800 volt LFP from CATL, you can absolutely be talking about, and I don't want to get carried away, because what's fast for Ford may not be fast. There's the part of my brain that's like, okay, you've been to China, you know what CATL can do, but are you talking China fast? A lot of
Chinese vehicles here,
because what we have to match it with our infrastructure here too, right? And you have to make it profitable. So there's a lot of ways to, a lot of levers to pull there, and which do they decide to pull I agree with you, Chris, because you could get away with 250 probably, right? As long as the curve is good.
Yeah, the curve is super important. If they
want it, we can give them 1.2 megawatts out of our stations if they really wanted to push it.
Kempower, Alpatronic, Tesla, eventually, they're all going to have these megawatt chargers. They're all going to have 800 volt.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at the Tesla competition, which I think is something that you look at, that all those vehicles, the new iterations of the Rivians, everything with 800 volt architecture, you're seeing those spike charging speeds up north of 300. And you can't release the future of EVs, the next iteration, without having that consideration, in my opinion. Because the beauty of that next phase is 800 volt architecture on a 100 kilowatt battery. You're going to end up being able to it's that true 10 to 15 minutes and you're back on the road experience instead of the 30 to 40 minute. And that makes a huge difference for buyer and consumer confidence when you have that ability to say, we'll give you 200 miles in 10 minutes. That's a big deal.
And it's kind of not fair. And Jace, you mentioned this on Thursday. When you're talking about the infrastructure, there was no V4s or V3s in, was it Michigan you were talking about to get up through there? That was paid for out of the company's pocket with the technology that was the best available then. And today it really isn't comparative if you have somebody else go in there. And the downside is they're going to have to do out of pocket to upgrade all that. And it is a big cost to upgrade. So I think that the train has left. And again, he just built it, I believe, so that he could sell cars. I think that economic engine is going to be there as more places. Josh and I are looking all over Atlanta, and we were looking at these numbers, and we're going to do a program throughout the state of Georgia that has, again, not been heard of before because of the adoption rate. It isn't because we'd want to do it in Tennessee first. I would love to do it in Tennessee first. We just don't have that many cars in comparison. So we're going to be able to go with 400 kilowatt, boom, instantly. Whereas because I have the cars to do it, they did it with what they had. And you really just can't go in there and do anything else unless you have this NEVI program giving you that risk difference in order to make up that difference. So I think that's another thing. Is there going to be megawatt charging? Only if you have cars that will charge at megawatt rates. Yeah. And if it's just Ford, it's going to be another 5 to 10 years before everybody adopts it. But I do feel like whatever Ford does, you're probably going to have Chevy right on their heels to do it.
Well, Chevy's already got the 800 volts. Tesla still doesn't. And so I think this is going to put spurs to them. They're going to have to get to 800 if Ford does it.
I think so.
Rivian's next one at R2 is not 800. R2 is 400 still. That's right. Which is, like, I initially thought, and we still don't know, for the record, guys. I mean,
well, again, I think we have to remember, though, profitability, and affordability. But also we have to remember that if we're talking a $30,000 truck, Ford's going to have the data on this. Of course, everybody's going to have their own data on this, right? But how many of those vehicles are now second and third vehicles versus first vehicle to be used on a road trip, so to speak, and DCFC'd often versus, the $50,000, $70,000 truck that maybe they would take on their road trip. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. What does Ford view? And remember, we got to remember too, Ford's super conservative with batteries and how they age and how they use them as they age. So they may say, well, we're going to boost to 250, but you might own it for 2-3 years and still have 99% state of health, right? Where we know with some other manufacturers that's not necessarily the case. So it's going to be fascinating. I don't think they're going to have a 10% buffer like they do on Lightning. Let's put it that way. I don't think there's going to be any way we're going to see anything. I think we're going to see efficiencies optimized.
You don't need it with LFP. LFP, what I love
true.
about LFP is you can charge it to 100. LFP also sets up well for the plug-in hybrid series, hybrid type concepts, right? Where you've got.
But the claim is that Ford uses the buffer that they eat into the buffer. Remember, that's the people claim. I don't know if that's true. That's what people claim to keep the state of health. I've never seen any data. But,
in theory, you would need that for NMC, but you wouldn't need that for LFP. So there's a number of advantages there where you can. But will
T3 be LFP? That's a whole nother conversation too.
I think it will be a mix. Obviously, we're just making stuff up now, but it's fun. Right. But I think your big heavy duties will. I think your full electric will be NMC, and then you're going to have somebody, because they've talked about this even with Lightning. Remember, they were going to have your standard range were going to be LFP, but your extended range would be NMC.
Mach-E is now.
Yeah, I could totally see like your Mach-E's, your standard range commercial T3s being LFP, and then your more industrial higher trim being NMC, and then your series hybrid being LFP as well, because they're again different use cases, and then the overall platform skateboard being shared and the zonal architecture being shared and all that kind of good stuff, and all the software obviously being.
And that's the interesting part. So will T3 probably can't and won't use this platform, right? So
no, it would have to be.
Are we going to see, are we going to see like a similar skate, bigger version, or is Ford going to go with more of an off-road oriented, thing? I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see.
I'm imagining it's going to be larger, more heavy duty, because you've got to fit. I think you got to fit your multiple drivetrains, right? They're going to make.
That's true too. Yeah, where does EREV play the? Yeah.
You're going to have EREV battery electric. You're going to have diesel. What I'm curious is how they incorporate the Ford experience, and even can you zonal? I don't know this, but can you zonal architect a diesel? Right? Like is there any reason you couldn't? I mean, that'll be kind of transformative in many ways, because that diesel market's not going anywhere. It's there's
at least I'm sure they'll try to bring those optimists, and they've talked about that, how Doug, and Doug Field and his, kind of vision has already sort of helped Ford Blue with the exact same issues that they're, trying to fix with Model E,
And I really can't overstate how much I think simplifying the process could help the company across the board over the next 5 years when it comes to warranty claims. I mean, they are remarkably high, like factors of 10 higher than the next person when it comes to warranty claims, and that stuff is eating away their profits. I'm also curious when you hit that period, because we've talked now for a couple of years, and these people talk about like, oh, they're losing 100,000 per vehicle, but so much of that is Kentucky and Irvine and the folks out here in Palo Alto, and the engineering and all the prototyping and all the stuff that goes, Monroe Live has talked about how it's, $3 billion to engineer an entire lineup of vehicles like that. And so there's so much of that money is being front loaded now. And so you could see 5 years down the road where all this comes together in a really healthy, encouraging way. And companies that aren't doing these things are going to have real problems, and Ford is getting ahead of it. And you can see how
GM. This is going to be fascinating to see GM's response to this. I am just so curious to see what GM is going to say to this, because Jim has talked about this. This is sort of this unevenness, right? Like GM jumped ahead, now Ford is gonna, jump ahead, and so it's like it's going to be fascinating to see like where's their response, because they're always sort of in lockstep, yet different ways, right? And so what are we going to hear from them? Because this is the talk that's coming from Ford is way beyond anything GM has talked about.
We need the competition for the cheap EV in the United States sourced here, because we have an overinflated market with OEMs scratching their head like, why am I not selling 100,000 of these $150,000 Cadillac Escalade IQs, and it's like, we need the $30,000 competition. Get 5 or 6 players of U.S. OEMs making great products, giving consumer choices, because that's what pushes the market and the industry forward as a whole. And the more you sell, the better the technology can improve, because you have more funding dollars, and it's a catalyst to help promote the future of the industry, rather than sit here and compete your way to the highest, most expensive, fanciest, flashiest EV that will never sell.
I will say that the very first truck that they make here in Tennessee at that plant, I will try my best to get my fingers in it, no matter what it is. I have children. I can, they'll hopefully by that point they won't be in the house anymore, so I might be able to afford another one. But I can't wait to see what we can actually produce here in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating.
I think this makes Tesla better. I think they're going to have to step up. You can't just roll out a stripped down Model Y and call it a day, or maybe they focus on Robotaxi and Optimus, and they lose. Maybe Rivian. I think it instantly puts them. Well, we'll see, right? Depending on that 400 versus 800.
I mean, everything that we've heard. I was just about to say this. So, let's take the Equinox, right? Equinox on sale now. It's going gangbusters, selling really, really well. Best ever non-Tesla selling EV, right? That's a big claim. That's great. What Ford is talking about today is miles ahead of what the Equinox is now,
for sure.
Especially when you combine the manufacturing aspects of it. So if Ford can really truly put that together, wow, that's going to be amazing. It's beyond even probably what Tesla manufacturing has now. Yeah. I mean, they claim too that we haven't even mentioned this yet. At one point, they claimed the 5-year ownership of this Ford EV would beat the 3-year, or it would beat it in 3 years for the Tesla Model Y current in 5-year ownership. The cost of ownership overall in 3 years, it would beat the Tesla Model 5.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yep, in just 3 years, that's crazy.
I think to kind of put a bow on the conversation, it was excellently summed up by the governor of Kentucky.
A crisp bow? What? A crisp
bow? No pun intended.
The governor of Kentucky came out and said, this is not a partisan win. This isn't a red. This isn't a blue win. This is a win for American jobs and the future of the industry in America. And I think that, obviously, I hope other players come up and step up and have awesome announcements too. Obviously, everybody that listens to our podcast knows that we're gigantically biased towards Ford because we love Ford. Chris wears a Ford hat every episode. However, I want them all to succeed. I want to see the industry push forward. And I think that this is a revolutionary moment. I agree that, for them, this could be a Model T moment for them going into this new phase of the industry, because it's this technology. If they pull it off right, like Jim said, it's not a guarantee, but if they pull it off right, they're gonna succeed and thrive in this market. So,
well, I think that will wrap it up for this special episode. Really cool of you guys to jump on and join us and kind of talk about this. We'll post the full episode on our YouTube channel later tonight, and then we'll get that also ported over to Apple Podcast and Spotify and all those other streaming platforms so that folks can hear the conversation. And then I put it up onto LinkedIn. It's on X right now. We've had almost 100 different folks on X watching, so great to have you guys chiming in. We do these live conversations usually on Thursday nights. We do different episodes on Tuesday with Josh Jeshy. We try to interview folks, so love you guys. Are Jeshy. It's Jeshy.
I love that he just called you out on that.
That's like Jeshy.
I was gonna try to talk through that part.
He's gonna let it go, and you had to bring it up.
No, you see, now they got booted. See, they got.
Oh gosh.
That's karma out there in Georgia, awesome. Wherever they are. But thank you guys for all watching and listening in, and follow us and chat with us, and we love to grow the channel. So if you guys are in EV content, I mean, obviously this is really heavily focused on Ford, but we love talking about all things electric, EV, sustainability, solar. Jason and I both have the the Ego lawnmowers. You've got the awesome riding lawnmower.
We still got to do it. We got to do an episode sometime on lawnmower, ego stuff. Just
yeah.
all the electric tools. I mean, it's changed our life. We just used the cultivator this weekend, and it probably saved us 10 hours of work if we didn't have that thing. So yeah, we got to do an episode on that sometime. It'd be fun.
So yeah, thanks everybody for engaging and dropping comments and likes and follow us. You know, we're all on X, and Josh and Jesse.
I was gonna say one last comment.
Yeah.
I had a phone call come in and it dropped my recording line here, but I'm pulling into the station that led us to start Power Up America. So we are charging here in Columbia, South Carolina, and it was the charging station that kind of triggered it all for me. So I'll take a video and I'll put it up on X later. So
yeah,
it was the genesis of Power Up. Yep.
Very cool.
Right. Anyways, have a good one, everybody.
More conversations to come. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.